One, well, your hazards would be on, we'll pretend,
Okay.
One yellow, side marker light, working properly. Lens is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, damaged, missing. I'm gonna turn
Oh, yeah. That was, thank you, Ashley.
The headlight's not.
You know what? Okay.
People get confused here.
Yeah.
Let me show you how to easily do this.
Okay.
Headlight and hazard light work properly. Headlight lens and yellow side reflector are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing.
Okay.
For the top here, all my lenses are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, broken, or missing. 3 yellow clearance lights working properly. Underneath the bus, check for any leaks, any leans, or anything hanging. Headlight and hazard light work properly. Headlight lens and yellow side reflector are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, damaged, or missing. Yellow side marker light works properly. Lens properly mounted and secure, not cracked, damaged, or missing.
Do you have to indicate that driver's side and passenger side? Just point and say? Okay.
A little bit.
I'm pointing. All hoses properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, damaged, or leaking. All right. Oil tube and dipstick properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. To check the oil, I would pull out the dipstick, wipe it off with a rag, reinsert it, make sure the levels between add and full. Down in there, these hoses, okay, these hoses go to the air compressor. So you just point down here. Air compressor, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking.
Which one is the air compressor?
You don't see it.
Oh, okay. So
It's
you
not
just-
imaginary, it's in there, but you can't see it,
Okay.
all right? But the hoses go to it. So you just point down in here. Air compressor, properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Right here it says power steering reservoir. It says right here on the sticker, power steering reservoir. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, leaking. Cap is on tight. Levels between add and full. The power steering hose is properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, missing, or leaking. Goes into my power steering gearbox. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. My power steering and my air compressor are gear driven. Steering linkage. Properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or damaged. All my castle nuts and cotter pins. There are 4 of them, 3 over here, 1 on the other side. But all you have to do is say all my castle nuts and cotter pins are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing.
Do you have to tell them one's on the other side?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so then we go right into suspension. Shock. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. There is fluid there. My leaf springs. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, shifted, or missing. I got a front mount. I got a rear mount. They are properly mounted and secured to the frame, not bent, broken, damaged. And my center U-bolts. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. That's suspension. Brakes. Brake hose. Properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or leaking. ABS wire. Properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or frayed. Right? This has air in it. This is wires. Brake chamber. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, dented, or leaking. Slack adjuster and push rod. Properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or damaged. With the brakes released, cannot be pulled more than 1 inch by hand. And then down in here, we've got a brake drum. Okay, brake drum and brake linings. Brake drum properly mounted and secured. Not bent, broken, no excessive dirt, oil, or grease. Dog. Brake linings properly mounted and secured. Not cracked, damaged, not worn excessively thin.
Do we have to use that, or can we more generically
No,
point?
you don't have to use it. I'm
Okay.
using it to point out stuff.
Okay. I just
When
wanna
you're doing the actual
generically
pre-trip,
point.
you could just go steering linkage. you
Okay.
know, all my cast nuts and cotter pins, brake hose, ABS wire, brake chamber.
Yay.
All right. Tires. Okay. Check all 3 sides of the tires for abrasion, bulges, or cuts. Make sure that it is worn evenly, and the depth is no less than 4/32 of an inch. I'm going to check my inner and outer rims, make sure that they are properly mounted and secure, not bent, broken, damaged, and no illegal welds. I'm going to check all my lug nuts Make sure that they are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing, and no signs of rust trails or shiny threads indicating loose nuts. Axle seal, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Okay, valve stem, properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or leaking, and to check the inflation, you use the tire gauge.
Yay!
Go ahead.
I'm gonna YouTube this.
Okay.
Okay, why does he make this look so
Now,
gross?
when you
I know.
do the check, your wheel has to be this side?
No, I just turned it that way so you can see the brakes better.
Oh, okay.
Coolant reservoir. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Cap is on tight, levels between add and full, and all hoses and clamps connected to it are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, missing, or leaking. Alternator. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. All wires from the alternator, properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, frayed, or missing. My alternator and my water pump are belt driven. Okay, the water pump is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Then I have my serpentine belt, properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or frayed, and does not have more than 3/4 inch play. And then would I check the rest the same? Yes, I would.
You had to say the whole thing over again?
Not if they tell you. When you come over here, they're gonna do one of two things usually. Once you come over here, they're gonna be like, just tell me what's different. That means you don't do suspension, brakes, and tires. Or when you get to that point of talking about your serpentine belt and a 3/4 inch play and all that, they're gonna say, would you check the rest the same? And you say, yes, I check it the rest. That means skip that part. All right. Oh yeah.
All right.
Do we need to stay with you?
Nope. State of Michigan does not care.
Oh, I know, I brought a little bit.
Right?
It looks like you need to
So
fill
on
all
this
the
side-
Care about everything else.
On this side, just coolant and the hoses that come off, right? Cap,
Uh-huh.
fluid level, alternator, water pump,
You guys
belt.
were
That's it. That's it.
videotaping. I did
Nice.
not.
That was Ashley.
Right?
The only time I've ever even seen this was like my second day here when Evelyn.
The thing,
Casey to go over with me again.
the meat
I'll
and
tape it
potatoes of this
next
pre-trip
time.
is going to be your brakes, suspension, and tires. If you can understand and know how to work through that area, okay, because that's a lot of easy points. Think about it. If you say you're going to check it the rest the same, but you miss like 3 things over there, it's double, right? You missed actually 6 things because you missed it on the other side when you said I check it the same. Well, if you check it the same, you're going to miss the same stuff, right? And then on the back, if you miss it up front, if you have good knowledge of it up front, you're going to miss it on the back, and then that's double back there too. It could be 12 points because you don't know about a brake hose, a brake chamber, and a slack adjustment, all right?
Okay. All right.
Easy points if you just understand it, right? So brakes is the hose and the wire goes into the chamber. You can see it better on the other side. Now, yeah, you got to say the little stuff, the properly mounted, secured, and all that stuff, right? But
Right.
understanding the path, right? I'm coming right out of the engine, hose, and the wire. They go right into that brake chamber, right? Follow the path. Out the brake chamber is the slack adjuster and push rod. And down in is the brake drum and linings. That's the
Okay.
path for the brakes, right? Just follow the path. You can't miss brakes if you follow that path. All right, your suspension, right? There's only 2 parts to really just suspension. There's the shock and the leaf springs. All right, then you just talk about the 3 things that are holding that leaf spring on. All right, the front mount, rear mount, center U-bolts. But all it is a shock and leaf springs. Then it's just talking about the 3 things that hold it on. All right, front mount, rear mount, center U-bolts. You got your brakes, right? Hose, wire into the chamber, slack adjuster, push rod down in with the brake and linings. Right? And then the tires, remember it's always 3 things, right? ABCs, abrasion, bulges, cuts, worn evenly, and the depth no less than 4/32. Right? Then you got your rims, fake like you look at the inside and the outside and you talk about them, right? Got the rims. So I'm just going from the outside of the tire and shrinking it in, right? Got the tire, got the rims, lug nuts, hub seal, and I end talking about the valve stem and tire gauge, and I'm off to the other side.
Okay.
With the
'Cause-
tires, you can say you're going to check them all the same. So if you're on this side, do you have to touch each individual tire and go through the whole thing, or you can just? Okay. Just want to make sure.
So, you know, when I spent a lot of time teaching this pre-trip, right? And I do it every day. I'm doing a pre-trip. I'm showing people pre-trip. I would start to get lost. I'm like, I've got to develop a way so that I can stay on path, because every day I'm mixing myself up, because I'm talking about this 3 times a day. I don't know if I talked about this already. So I just made paths, right? I just made paths. I can't get lost if I stay on path. I know where I begin, where I end. I know I'm done talking about my brakes when I'm in here talking about brake drum and brake linings. Then I move on to my tires, and I know I'm done talking about tires when I've gone all the way from the outside in and end on the valve stem. I always try to end on the thing easily missed, right? People miss that valve stem. That's why I ended it. Go on to the other side, right? Work top down. Coolant, alternator, and the water pump. Notice how I group the alternator and water pump and talk about them belt driven together. The air compressor and power steering, talk about them together. Gear driven.
Okay.
Oh, yeah?
It's easier to memorize them when you group them together.
It
too.
is.
And you said
It
the
is.
same is in the back as well, right?
Once you get into it, right, you talk about all your hoses, your oil tube, and then your air compressor. Okay, don't forget the air compressor. And then this stuff is just gears. This is your power steering stuff, right? Start with the reservoir, follow the hose into the gearbox. Then you got coming out to the gearbox is your linkage, and then you've got your castle nuts and cotter pins on there. Once I'm talking about my castle nuts and cotter pins, I move on to suspension. Right? I'm talking about the 3 things that hold on those leaf springs, I move into brakes. I'm talking about drum and linings, I move on to tires. I'm talking about valve stem, I move on. Right? So if you can see the path, if you can develop the path,
It'll be
work
easier
through
to
it.
follow.
It'll be a lot easier for you. Right? Where people get confused is where they start talking about, oh, I see my shock, but then they're like, oh yeah, I see my slack adjuster, and now, oh wait, I see this, and then, when they start jumping all around, that's when we start missing stuff, because now we're off path. We have no real what's the word? Organization for what we're doing. Make
That's
sense?
very helpful. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
I don't want to say too much. I don't want to overload you.
That's good, because then we'll work on the tires,
Whatever you call it. The whatchamacallit.
Yeah.
Suspension, brakes, tires. Know them, love them. Be able to work
I do
through it.
love
If you can get through the suspension, brakes, tires, you're gonna be very well on the outside.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to the rear, because you don't get to see them, right?
All right.
Now you can't climb underneath like John did, but all that just seems unnecessary.
Okay.
With
Right.
this pillow.
Because you should be able to just close your eyes and be able to go through brakes, suspension, and tires. I can do it. I've done it a lot longer.
Okay.
By the time you test, you should be able to just close your eyes and be able to.
So how do you
Brake,
tell
suspension,
the
Brake.
inspector about the suspension and tires?
You generically point and memorize what you say.
I got a shock, properly mounted and secured. Crack damaged or leaking. Got leaf springs, properly mounted and secured, not crack damaged, shifted or missing. My front mount and my center U-bolts are properly mounted and secured, not crack damaged or missing. Got a rear airbag, properly mounted and secured. No abrasion, bulges, cuts, fully inflated, not leaking.
So you can't really see it, but you can.
Wait, where is that?
Fake it.
Okay, fake it.
Okay.
It's all pretend,
That's why I asked if we had to use it or if we
No.
could
I would
generically
use it.
point.
right? Then my brakes, right? I
You're
got
more
2 brake
spot on
hoses,
if
properly
you're
mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or missing, right? They go into the brake.
wrong.
I got an ABS wire back here too, right? Properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or frayed. It goes into the brake chamber just like up front. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, dented, or leaking. Slack adjuster and push rod comes out the back of that, right? Properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, damaged with the brakes released. Can't be pulled more than 1 inch by hand, right? And then down into the tire with the brake drum and linings. Brake drums properly mounted and secured, not cracked, dented, no excessive dirt, oil, or grease. Brake linings properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, not worn excessively thin. Yeah, I didn't really look at any of that.
Okay.
You make it seem super easy.
What's this piece back here again?
Like,
Yeah.
That's it's a mud flap.
Mud flap.
Call it, you can
You
call
have
it
to
a
speak on
splash
that?
guard. You can call it a mud flap, whatever.
Okay. Do we speak on that?
Yeah, but when you move around back. So
Okay.
with the tires back here, right? I got check all 6 sides of my tires for abrasion, bulges, or cuts. Make sure the tread is worn evenly and the depth is no less than 2/32 of an inch. And also want to make sure that my bud spacing is evenly spaced and free of debris, right? Space between the tires. Check the inner and outer rims here. Make sure that they are properly mounted, secure, not bent, broken, damaged, no illegal welds. Check all my lug nuts. Make sure that they are properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. No signs of rust trails or shiny threads indicating loose nuts. And back here I have an axle seal, properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, or leaking, and no missing nuts or bolts. And then I end with 2 valve stems, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, missing, or leaking. And I have a check inflation with a tire gauge. And I got 4 splash guards, properly mounted, secured, not cut, torn, damaged, or missing. Check those all the same. Off to the back.
Okay.
Is that a
But
dent?
you guys should just do.
That first?
Just start with
And this we just speak on the lenses, saying that it's properly mounted, secured. All the lens.
well, we didn't talk about underneath. Right?
We skipped the whole section.
All right. Well, if you come around from the engine, the first thing you're going to do is the side of the bus, right?
Okay.
I like to start here at the stop sign because it's in my face. Properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, damaged, missing any screws. All right. Then I start at the top. 2 yellow, 1 red clearance lights working properly. Lenses properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, or missing. I have 3 emergency exit window labels, and all my yellow reflective tape are properly mounted, secure, not cracked, peeling, or missing. I have 2 yellow side marker lights working properly, and the lenses are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. I have 2 yellow and 1 red reflectors, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, missing. Underneath the bus, I have a frame which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, damaged, no illegal welds. I've got cross members, right, or ribs, properly mounted, secured.
I remember
Not
those.
cracked, damaged, no holes in the floor. That's just like, you know, the skeleton of the bus underneath. You can't see any of this stuff. You can see parts of it. I've got an exhaust, right? Fred. Frame, ribs, exhaust, drive shaft. I've got an exhaust, properly mounted and secured. Not cracked, damaged, or leaking. No signs of excessive black soot or carbon indicating leaks. The exhaust clamps, right? Properly mounted and secured. Not cracked, damaged, or missing. The clamps are holding it on. Drive shaft is properly mounted and secured. Not bent, broken, or damaged. The universal joints, which are just connecting the drive shaft together, properly mounted and secured. Not cracked, damaged, not improperly greased. My safety loops are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, missing, and free of any debris. Then you go on to suspension, brakes, tires, right? Shock, leaf springs, front mount, center U-bolt. We don't have a rear mount here like we do up front. We've got a rear airbag, right? Fully inflated, not leaking. Brakes, 2 brake hoses, right? Everything else the same. With hoses and wire, or ABS wire, then that goes into the chamber. Out the other side, the slack adjuster and push rod. Down in for the drum and linings. Then you got 6 sides of your tires, right? Always 3 things you talk about: the ABCs, worn even, and the depth. No less than 232s. And back here we talk about the bud spacing, right? Free of, evenly spaced, free of debris. Still got your rims, got your lug nuts, down into your axle seal. No missing nuts or bolts. 2 valve stems back here. Properly mounted, not leaking, right? Check inflation, use a tire gauge, and then you got your splash guards, which go to the back. So obviously with all that stuff, you have to say properly mounted, secured, and correct it. That's just showing you the path I take. All right, so when I come to the back, you know, I like to go Vanna White style, all my lenses, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. All right, so I've already talked about pretty much the functionality of all these lights, right? We've already talked about how our turn signals work. We've already talked about our student ambers and student reds. We've already talked about our clearance lights, tail lights, right? We've already talked about all this. That's why I went all of them are properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. Since these are blinking at me, I'm going to say my 2 yellow hazard lights are working properly. All right? 2 red reflectors, properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. Emergency door label And all my yellow reflective tape, properly mounted, secured, not cracked, peeling, or missing. Alright? I'm gonna open the door. This is the big door word. Pretend like I'm looking at the door seal. Alright. The prop rod worked properly, right? And it is properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or damaged. My door seal was properly mounted and secured, not cut, corroded, damaged. And my door hinges are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. Alright, so all that, I go here. My tailpipe, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. And all clamps are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or missing. Underneath, check the fuel tank, fuel cage, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or leaking. And then when you come to this side, they might say, tell me what's different, okay? Or listen to their instructions. They might say, tell me what's different. What they really want you to do is talk about this. Fuel cap, fuel door, open properly, caps on tight, not leaking. Now, they might say, you know, just go over the side of the bus, you're gonna have to go over the whole side of the bus. What they're really looking for, what they haven't checked off is this.
Okay. Thank you so much.